Hello and welcome to the SCAN Adult Education Center. My name is Donna Cardillo and our guest today is Dr. Jessica Israel, MD. Welcome, Dr. Israel.
Thank you.
Dr. Israel, you are the Division Chief of Geriatrics and Palliative Medicine at Monmouth Medical Center. So let's start by telling our viewers exactly what geriatric medicine is and then what palliative medicine is, because it's not something maybe that the average viewer is familiar with.
I agree. It's a good question. People ask me all the time, what exactly do you do? So I have two different specialties, one in geriatric medicine, and in my geriatrics practice, we take care of older adults. So that really is 65 and older. When I was a resident, I used to think 65 was very old. Now I don't think it's as old anymore, but 65 and older is really the cutoff in our practice. But the practice of geriatric medicine really is a specialty that cares for frail older adults.
Okay.
So nowadays people age in two different directions. We have some very successful agers and some people who have a harder time with that. The specialty of geriatrics really focuses on that, but at the same time we can provide primary care for people who are aging a little more successfully.
Okay, so what you're saying is geriatrics focuses more on the 65 plus population that is having perhaps some challenges with health, et cetera. Okay, great.
Absolutely. I mean, as we talk more later today, I'll focus on that. There are ways that older adults present with common illnesses that are very, very different than what happens when someone 35 presents with that same illness.
Gotcha, interesting. And how about palliative medicine? What does that mean exactly?
So palliative medicine is a new field in internal medicine. It's a subspecialty of internal medicine, and basically I deal with patients with serious medical illness. I always say that the quickest and easiest definition is that it's good care for patients with serious medical problems. But what I see for the most part with palliative care are patients with advanced illness, a lot of advanced cancer, end-stage disease, end-stage heart disease, end-stage Alzheimer's disease, end-stage lung disease, combined with a lot of cancers. And I help patients with complicated medical decision-making and advanced symptom management.
Okay, and I've sometimes heard palliative care being referred to as comfort care. Is there any truth to that statement?
I think all medicine should be comfort care, but there's a lot of truth to that statement.
Yes. Good answer. All right, so tell us then, why is there a need for a special geriatric emergency department, such as the one that is at Monmouth Medical Center?
So typically older adults, they present very, very differently than younger adults do with medical problems. So in a geriatric emergency room, it's more specialized to the needs of someone older that's coming in. Okay. So we can talk more about that, but for example, the lighting is different, the bedding is different, the room is set up differently because it's a different type of patient coming in. Okay. And our population in general is getting older, right? The population above the age of 85 is the fastest growing section of our population to begin with. As our population grows, there's more and more older adults needing that kind of specialized care.
Okay. So you talk about some special amenities in the geriatric emergency department. Could you give us some specifics and elaborate on that a little bit?
So we have 6 pretty fabulous beds in our emergency department. So they are specialized for comfort in a lot of ways. The mattresses are specialized so that the skin is comfortable and doesn't break down. There are speakers around the pillows. I don't know if you've ever been in the hospital, hopefully not, but you get that little thing that has the speaker on it. So instead of that, having to hold it up to your ear, it's more specialized so someone can see the TV or have just some moments of relaxation. There's room for a caregiver, which makes a big difference. The lighting is lower, the floors are different, the blankets are different, just to make the experience more relaxing.
Okay, excellent. And as a registered nurse, I know that when people are in the emergency room, it's very easy to become disoriented. So anything in particular that helps that geriatric patient stay a little more oriented to time, for example?
There are big face clocks with large numbers, easy to read. Actually, there's a lot of data that just sort of knowing the time every day and even being able to see that alone can help to orient someone.
Just keep people oriented.
I think the biggest difference is the training of the staff and also just having a family member there. The thing that I always teach medical students and residents is the best thing that you can do for confusion is to try to reorient. It's Tuesday, you're in the emergency room because you fell. Even if you say that multiple times, it helps bring someone's focus back. If they're delirious or having a change in how they're thinking.
Okay. And I'm glad to hear you mention room for a caregiver. So then apparently you encourage caregivers to stay with that individual in the geriatric emergency department.
Absolutely. I
Okay.
think if you are caring for someone who is medically frail and maybe cognitively frail, the biggest asset that patient can have is someone by their bedside who's right there with them, who knows the story, and who can help in their care.
Okay, and help keep them oriented and safe. And I know too that very often some geriatric patients, they're more prone to falls, especially when they're confused. Any particular mechanisms in place to
So the
address
hospital
that?
bed in particular helps to alert us that there's a risk for fall. If someone starts to move in a way that looks like they're going to fall off, the beds are alarmed.
Wonderful.
The floors are like lit differently than the rest of the hospital. I always say hospitals are fantastic about constantly cleaning floors and making them shiny and fresh, but that's actually not so good for older people because the glare makes it harder. In addition, anytime someone's in the hospital and tethered in a way to an IV, to a catheter, even to the television thing that's on a wire, right? They're all increased risk for falls. So those kinds of things we try to keep at bay.
Okay, that's great. So what type of specific challenges or medical conditions might make someone eligible to be seen and treated in a geriatric emergency department?
It's a good question. So generally, just like the practice of geriatrics, anyone over 65 is eligible to come into our unit. But the challenging cases and the cases that this unit is really developed for it's older adults who present with things, like I said, younger adults present with, but in different ways. So most emergency rooms, when you think about an emergency room and the things that you see on TV about an emergency room, you think about gunshot wounds and bleeding and a different type of emergency than a geriatric emergency is. So in general, for older adults, and particularly older adults who are frail or have some cognitive compromise, their emergency is sort of a quieter emergency. It may be something very, very subtle, like a change in thinking, and that can be because they're having a heart attack or because they have a fulminant infection. Things don't present exactly the same way. Where a 45-year-old man might come into the emergency room and say, I'm having crushing chest pain, right? The older adult, the 82-year-old frail older adult with multiple comorbid conditions might simply be confused. And the family says, wow, we were at dinner and she's totally different than she was at lunchtime. And that's your primary presentation. So it's still that same underlying emergency. It's just presenting in more subtle ways, a little bit quieter than the rest of the ER is.
And when you say comorbid conditions, you're referring to different disease processes, or do you want to just explain what that means?
Absolutely. So most older adults don't come in with just one thing. They're not coming in because they're having a heart attack. They're coming in because they're having a heart attack on top of their advanced rheumatoid arthritis, with their diabetes, with high blood pressure, and perhaps with a history of multiple heart problems that led them to this place to begin with. So most older adults are dealing with more than one chronic illness. And as people live longer and longer, and as medicine gets better and better, the chronic illness becomes its own thing, and people come in with multiple ones, and it's the crossover of those things, different medications that are prescribed for one thing that maybe didn't work so well with the other thing, that causes some of these types of problems.
So in other words, what you're saying is it's rarely just that the presenting problem, perhaps like a younger person might have, but then it's all the other complicating illnesses and medicines, and how whatever they're presenting with is going to impact and affect all of that, and how those other things are going to affect the current thing that they present with also.
The difference is there's like a threshold, and the threshold for change in someone who's older is little, right? The tiniest thing can make a difference. And I just wanted to bring up in what I was saying and what you just reminded me of, one of the biggest issues we have with older adults is medication management. And we actually have dedicated to this emergency, to the geriatric emergency room, an amazing pharmacist who has some specialty in geriatric medicine. So when the patient comes in, she looks at everything they're on at home. Very, very frequently, we find things that have led that patient to be in the emergency room. That's a close and critical look, because when someone has frailty and cognitive frailty, it's a sort of a setup for these types of medical problems to occur.
Wow, wow.
Most older adults are on 8 to 11 medications. It's a lot.
Wow, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Well, we're going to take a short break right now, and we will return after a brief announcement.
Along with weight loss, it's one of the many ways to fight osteoarthritis pain. For more information on managing pain, go to fightarthritispain.org.
Welcome back. My name is Donna Cardillo, and we're speaking with Dr. Jessica Israel about the Geriatric Emergency Department at Monmouth Medical Center. So, Dr. Israel, you mentioned earlier about pharmacists having special training. What about the physicians and the nurses that work in the Geriatric Emergency Department? Do they have any special training or background as well?
Yes, actually, just to back up a little bit, geriatrics as a specialty is very team-oriented. Our approach in our outpatient practice, the approach in the hospital is there are a lot of people that can make a very big difference in the medical care of someone who is older. And the geriatric emergency room is set up in much the same way. It's really a team approach to the care of patients. That's the beauty of it, because different people see different things, and then in meeting together, feed off of each other's expertise. So the emergency room attendings have training in how to deal with older adult patients. Our specialty of geriatric medicine at Monmouth Medical Center can also lend assistance on certain cases. We have a nurse practitioner specifically trained in geriatrics who sees the cases in the emergency room. We have the pharmacist I was telling you about, and then the ER nurses also receive specific training. So it is it's a multidisciplinary program, and I think that that's what makes the biggest difference in terms of figuring out what's that care plan going to be moving forward.
So it's not just some of the physical amenities that you already talked about, but it's a team approach of people who are passionate about the specialty but also have special qualifications to work with that population.
Absolutely.
That's excellent. So you mentioned in the beginning of the interview that people who are 65 and over, that was generally the target of the geriatric specialty. So if someone were 65 and they presented in the emergency room with whatever, would they automatically be admitted to the geriatric emergency department?
There are a lot more 65-year-olds coming to the emergency room than can come into the department. Right now it's 6 beds that are set up in this way. So it really focuses on patients with comorbidities or complicated presentations.
Complications, yeah, or
Right.
other illnesses. Okay. So what would happen then when they come into the emergency room? Would someone see them and evaluate them
So they're
first?
screened right at triage, and
Okay.
if they're appropriate for the unit, that's where they go.
And who triages them typically in an emergency department?
The triage nurse right at the front desk.
Okay, and they're going to evaluate and decide what the best place would be for them to go. So in addition to the amenities and the special staff that we talked about, how else might a visit to the geriatric emergency department be different than a regular emergency room visit, other than the physical amenities that you talked about?
I think it's the physical amenities that catch people, that say this was a better experience for me than something that I've experienced before. But if they take a step back, the biggest difference is what I was talking about. It's the team-oriented approach. It's looking at things that are not typically looked at in an emergency room visit. It's sort of that brown bag evaluation of what are the medications that your mom has been taking? Should she be taking them? Are there duplicates in that bag? It's an overall team-oriented look at the presentation. What is this presentation telling us about the underlying illness? There's the communication about those things too. And then the really nice thing about the geriatric emergency room at Monmouth is that is just the beginning of care for older adults at the hospital. The care that begins in the emergency room follows them onto the floor and then follows them to home. We are also working with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation on a grant about transitions in care for frail older adults with dementia. So patients who come into our unit that meet those specifications are followed through their entire hospital stay until they go home, and then after they're home, in terms of where that next transition step is going to be. What we've found is that older adults who are transferring from one care setting to the next, be that home to the emergency room to the hospital to either rehab, a nursing home, hospice, whatever that may be, it's those transition points that are risky points for patients because there's so much information, and how it's communicated is really critically important to ensure success in that patient's care. So the nice thing about our emergency room is that patients that qualify for that program as well are picked up as soon as they walk in the door. And then we're able to really offer them long-standing follow-up.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And I was just thinking, because I have some elderly, frail people in my own family, and do you have any tips for how maybe family members can prepare when they bring their loved one into the emergency room? I know, for example, my mother-in-law has always asked for a list of her medication. She's on, how many medications did you say the average elderly
8 to
person?
11.
8 to 11, that's amazing. So she's on at least 8 to 11 medication. And I know it's very helpful to have a list of medications already written out so that someone doesn't have to rely on their memory or can't remember the dosages.
So I think, yes, those types of things are helpful. List of medications are helpful. Any type of documentation from a doctor's office that they've given the patient is helpful. But I have to say the most helpful thing is for the caregiver of that patient, the primary caregiver, the person that loves them, to be able to tell the doctor and the nursing staff, this is how my mom usually is, and this is how she is today. The very, very difficult part about the presentation that involves a change in how someone is appearing is that if you don't know that baseline, it's very hard to gauge that difference. Whereas a daughter sitting next to your mom, it's an enormous difference, but it may be very hard to see on the other side. So it's that communication of, this is my mom, this is what she's usually like, this is what she can do, and this is what happened today, and those differences that are the most meaningful information you can give.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
Most
It's an excellent
emergencies,
point.
thank you, most emergencies, people don't have time to kind of throw a lot of stuff together. So the best that you can do is to give that off the top of your head, this is what I've lived with up until now. These are my expectations, and this is what I'm worried about. Makes the biggest difference, especially if that patient can't communicate those things themselves.
And I know too, in my own family, sometimes my family members forget. They'll be asked a question about their health or their background, and they say no, and I say, remember you had that, or you were in the hospital for that, so it would be good for that, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely.
So other than the geriatric emergency department services, what other special services for the geriatric population does Monmouth Medical Center offer? Anything else?
So for older adults today, Monmouth Medical Center is a really nice home for them. We have the Geriatric Emergency Department, which started, that's what we're talking about, at the end of last year. We have an amazing geriatrics practice. I mean, I'm saying that because I work there, but I'm lucky enough to work with Dr. Angie, who directs that practice, Dr. Priya Angie, who's amazing. And we have an interdisciplinary staff there as well, including social work and nursing, all together caring for our patients. So that's an outpatient practice at Monmouth. I think that is a real asset. And then in addition, as I alluded to before, we have this grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to focus on older adults with at their transition points that have cognitive compromise. And that's a newly developed program that follows patients through the hospital and then outside the hospital as well. So there are a lot of really nice services in place now and a lot of innovative things on the horizon.
Very good. And is Dr. Angie a geriatrician? Is that correct?
Dr. Angie's a geriatrician as well.
And just explain what that specialty is. It may seem obvious, but for viewers who haven't heard that specialty in medicine before, because it's a new term,
So
fairly new.
Geriatric medicine is its own fellowship. So when we train in medicine, we train in internal medicine, and then we decide to specialize in a field, just like the way a cardiologist would specialize in cardiology, a geriatrician specializes in geriatric medicine.
Okay, very
It's a
interesting.
fellowship in addition to the internal medicine training.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you for having me here. It's definitely a pleasure and an honor to talk about the program that we developed. And the main thing that I think is important to stress about is really this interdisciplinary approach. It came together from a lot of great minds thinking of all the things that we need to put in place, and that's the way it's rolling out as well. I think that's the biggest advantage for our patients.
That's great, very interesting, and sounds very innovative. Certainly Monmouth is cutting edge with that program, and it'll be
think so.
interesting to continue to see what develops there. So for our viewers who would like to learn more about the Geriatric Emergency Medicine Unit at Monmouth Medical Center, you can call 732-923-6740. That's 732-923-6740. And for other programs or services for seniors, you can call 888-724-7123. Again, other programs and services for seniors, 888-724-7123. And Dr. Israel, with the few minutes that we have left, can you just tell us a little bit about your background? Just like to hear a little bit about how you got to where you are today in this specialty.
Sure.
Before we wrap up.
Sure. I'm trained in internal medicine from Mount Sinai Medical Center in New York City. That's where I went to medical school as well. And I did my geriatrics fellowship at Mount Sinai as well. Now I've been at Monmouth for about 10 years. I'm interested in the specialty because I was lucky enough to have 4 grandparents for most of my life. And they were a huge influence on me. And when I was making my decision about what I wanted to go into, it was my grandfather who kind of said, this is where you should go, you know, and that's what drove me there. Most geriatricians have a story like that. They were lucky enough to have older adults make a very big difference in their life and to push them to want to extend that.
Love it very much. So thank you to Dr. Jessica Israel. Thank you all for viewing today. And please stay tuned for Pat Bohse, who is the Executive Director of the SCAN Adult Education Services, with a special message.
Welcome to SCAN. My name is Pat Bohse, and I'm the new Executive Director of the Senior Citizen Activities Network, better known as SCAN. We're located conveniently at the Monmouth Mall on the lower level next to the management office. And we are here today to discuss the future plans of SCAN. Before I do that, though, I really would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has welcomed me in regards to Board of Directors, staff, volunteers, but mostly to our members. SCAN is a membership organization, and we provide our members with many opportunities, including discounts to some of the mall stores here, discounts to the Pollock Theater at Monmouth University, and we're planning for additional offerings in the future. SCAN, we have 3 semesters where we provide classes, all types of classes, to our members and to the general public. And our semesters are spring, summer, fall, and winter. We are in the process right now of starting registration for our spring, summer classes. And we're hoping that you will take the opportunity to visit our website at www.scannj.com to see our offerings. And I really wanted to take this opportunity to share some of the new things that will be coming up in the near future at SCAN. We will be opening on Wednesday evenings, and it will be called Get Off the Couch. And during those sessions, we'll be providing classes in Zumba, belly dancing, yoga. We will have our computer lab open for computer classes, and we will be providing some educational workshops during the spring-summer semester. On May 16th, we will also be having our Health and Wellness Expo in the Monmouth Mall between the hours of 1 and 7, and we'll be offering screenings, health screenings, demonstrations in regards to different types of exercise classes that we provide, and also we will have lectures on health and wellness issues. So we're hoping that you will join us for those activities. The other project that we're working on is collecting cell phones so that they can be repurposed to use as 911 phones for seniors who are in need of them in case of emergency, and also for domestic violence victims. So we're hoping that at some point that you are able to come and take a tour of SCAN. We're offering first-time participants to come and try a class before you sign up. And so we're truly hoping that you will take this opportunity to visit us. There's so much more that I could share with you, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and hope that you will come visit us when you're here at the mall. And also we are providing you with a calendar of activities coming up in the near future.
Notes on April activities. Registration for classes at SCAN will begin on April 1st. The spring semester starts on April 30th and will run through July 27th. New this semester, SCAN will be offering night classes. For more information on SCAN classes and activities, go to www.scannj.com. Looking ahead, SCAN's Health and Wellness Expo will take place on May 16th here at Monmouth Mall. Music of Tin Pan Alley. If you enjoy the music of the Great American Songbook, this course is for you. The important composers and lyricists from Irving Berlin to Gershwin, Cole Porter, Rodgers and Hart, Hammerstein, Schwartz, Dietz, Stein, and many others are included. Popular vocalists sing the songs of these great composers. The sample music changes with each semester. Jazz Roots and Riffs. Jazz Roots and Riffs is a survey of America's original art form, jazz. It covers the history and development of the music, including all styles from ragtime, New Orleans, and Kansas City to bop and post-bop era. Individual musicians are discussed and their music is played on CD. There's plenty of music, and it changes with each semester. The basic digital photography course at SCAN is ideally suited for beginners who wish to get the most out of their camera. This is done by learning how to easily take pictures, view them in many different ways, and preserve them for the future. Taught in a relaxed manner, the friendly instructor makes everyone feel at home as their understanding of the subject rapidly expands. For those wishing to build upon the basics, an intermediate class is offered which helps the student to gain an understanding of many of the advanced controls on the camera. Another course, On Location, lifts you out of the classroom and into the field as you use your camera to capture nature at scenic locations in Monmouth County under the supervision of an instructor. Rounding out the offerings is a special course in green screen using Photoshop elements. Learn how to magically put yourself and friends into pictures by simply changing the background. Digital photography, intermediate digital photography, on location and green screen, a perfect set of classes for those wishing to take photography to the next higher level.
Anyone can join SCAN's recorder class and have fun learning to play these fascinating instruments, plus make new friends in the process. Then use your newly acquired musical skills to entertain others. To register for the recorder class, call 732-542-1326 or go to www.scannj.com.
Pilates. Tone and strengthen your body without adding bulk or stressing your joints. Learn the movements that the dancers and stars use to give them that beautiful, lean, long look while adding the strength you need to help you perform your daily activities. Get in shape with low-impact aerobics. Refresh yourself with an energized session of low-impact movements. Enjoy an aerobic session of stretching and toning while moving to music. Build strength with various forms of bands, tubing, balls, and weights, specifically designed for the active adult who enjoys a group exercise format. This program was made possible in part by funding from the following sponsors: Monmouth Medical Center, New Jersey Natural Gas,